as the water flows through it, it creates turbulence, which increases the efficiency of the water transfer, and it also increases the surface area of contact, so that the cooling, you can best power away from your engine in the water pump. And once again, I think this is a wonderful example of how 3D printing, additive manufacturing is making new things happen. In case it's the designers who would have to know how to do this and have the right software to help them optimize those very complex shapes. So certainly, yes, we do see new things happening with 3D printing or additive manufacturing, but I actually think that a more deeper and maybe long-lasting impact is going to be how people are bringing new opportunities to how they do business. And what I'm going to do in the next part of the lecture, the second part of it, is to look at how we may have done business in several different ways. And so I'm going to look at what we could call the evolution of business models. So if we move on again, here you should have a title of the slide, used to do things. Maybe some companies still work this way, where you get a special department to do your market research, supposedly trying to tell you what your customers want, then the designer has to interpret that into a specification, and then an actual design is made, and there could always be compromises happening there, and finally it gets back to your whole market, and you're hoping that many consumers are going to want the product that you have designed. And the problem with this is that between market research and the designer, and even between the designer and the manufacturer, some of the information can be lost, and we can end up, if we move the slide again, we can end up with something like this, and I've entitled it "When Market Research Does Not Work." Now, this was a little three-wheeled vehicle designed in the UK. Has anybody ever seen one of these before? I don't think it made it to America, and not surprisingly, it hardly made it to the UK. This guy, Clive Sinclair, who is a very, very famous inventor, said he'd done some market research into what people would want to drive or ride on the UK roads, and when he took that information, he created this thing which he called the C5. And you can see him going down through some London traffic, and I could ask you the question, would any of you wish to ride that thing through traffic in your city? And I think the answer would probably be no. And yet he said on his market research, but the market research failed him. And so people began to realize that just using questionnaires and surveys and so on perhaps isn't the best way to get into your consumer's mind. And so we've moved on, and many companies now today will use various tactics. One of them is using a focus group, real users in, and you won't sit them down just with marketing people, you'll actually sit them down with designers, and designers can maybe even spend time alongside the consumers in their home, and then the group can look something like this. Very important. The most important thing is most happy. And we've done some of this at Longhborough, and provided you get a representative sample of your target user group, but that's moving on a little bit. We haven't even started to talk about 3D printing, but this is probably where we are in most companies at the moment. So what can we do with 3D printing? Well, certainly something which is already happening is, if we move on with, this is entitled Bespoke Route to Market. And what we're saying here is, rather than trying to design something for everybody in the market, you may act with the customers and the designer, work with them, come up with a design, and perhaps use 3D printing as a way of making a small batch production, one copy, and sell that to the individual consumer. So the idea of selling to everybody, to many consumers, disappears. And this is something which we've done for years with things like tailor-made suits, but now we're beginning to do it with other products as well. And so a very good example of this, which used to actually I think it was called Bespoke Innovation before it was taken over by 3D Systems. But the idea here is that your prosthetic would be your own personalized version, and this would be a bespoke prosthetic only, and the consumer could get something which maybe matched their lifestyle. So the guy on the left has gone for something perhaps more military, the guy on the right has gone for something, I don't know, blends in with some of the furniture that he likes. And I've even seen examples where a lady has had one which looks like it's fishnet stockings. So you can have any design you like, but 3D printing is used to make all these prosthetics, not the functional part, but certainly the clip-on exterior. Now moving on from that, we could go into then the realm of what we could call do-it-yourself manufacturing, where the individual customer will have the idea and they may go to a designer to get that turned into reality, and then 3D printing can make it. But it can go a stage further than that, where the consumer could actually try to act as their own designer and maker. I suppose this is what the maker community is doing, where they're saying, yes, we can get hold of some software, we can do our own designs, we can make them using 3D printing, and it's for my own personal use. And that's happening quite a lot. But the community, we find that the community doing this, and you representing about 10% of the general population. Moving on from that, just showing some examples of where people have done this, where they use what I call Easy-CAD. That's an easier to use CAD system. In this case, Autodesk 123D. How many people have seen this software, Autodesk 123D? Anybody used it? Nobody used it? The good thing about it is that it's much easier to pick up than standard Inventor or SolidWorks or Creo or NX. It's made for, if you like, everyday people to have a go at creating three-dimensional shapes. And my colleague in South Africa, who uses quite a lot, have found that almost anybody can come in off the street and within a couple of hours are creating some quite complex shapes. And then they maybe build them on their own 3D printer, or perhaps they get them built at a fab lab or something like that. So moving on from that, next slide, consumer as designer. Now this is getting closer to some of the work that we are doing at Longhborough. Well, we believe the consumer can be brought more closely into the design process, but probably not to do necessarily all the design themselves. So though we say consumer as designer, what we find is actually the best way for it to work is to have a partnership between consumer and designer. But if you can create some clever software, then actually the consumer can do most of the design work. And I guess I've seen the nervous system website. How many people have had a go at nervous system? You haven't designed your own rings or bracelets, so it's fun. And the good thing about it is the software is designed in such an easy to use way that people who've done no design can come on, use the software, change some parameters, come up with a fairly personalized design. And so maybe it doesn't quite got to themselves. And my wife, who's never done any design before, had a go at doing this last month and came up with her own designer bracelet and found the software fairly easy to use. So here, it's clever software enables the consumer to act as a designer. But these are very aesthetic pieces. There's nothing much functional about them, and there aren't really many safety issues. As long as there's those sharp edges, it's not going to cause many safety problems. So how do we move on from that? Well, what some people have said is, okay, we can use consumers as a source of designs, but we'll do it through crowdsourcing. And instead of having an individual customer, what we do is we actually say to many consumers, okay, tell us what you would like in the way of design. And then they even come up with their own designs using some of these Easy-CAD software. And maybe there are even some crowd design websites that will allow people to upload their designs. The community will vote on those designs, and the winners get 3D printed. And you're hoping that because they have been crowdsourced and that many people have decided they like that design, you will be able to sell not just back to the person who designed it, but on to many consumers as well. But once again, 3D printing is the route to doing that, because you maybe want to try out several different designs actually before people vote on them. They want to see what the real product looks like. And then you can maybe expand into normal production. And this can be used to set up online collections of consumer design products. And here I've got 3D, MakerBot, Thingiverse, My Mini Factory. This is where consumers are uploading their own designs and other people can decide if they want to buy them. And it's a way of getting your product onto the marketplace really quite quickly. And this is something which really 3D printing has made much easier. I guess in the past we could do it with simpler designs using things like laser cutting, but now we can do it with three-dimensional design as well. So we can see that 3D printing can be used to support different types of business models, but when we look at most of those things that are being made, as I said, they don't have a lot of functionality and they're not really safety critical items. So we asked ourselves this question at Loughborough, okay, so we think that consumers can do some interesting design work, but what are we going to do about maintaining functionality and maintaining safety, which is obviously critical for any product. So we've come up with a concept where we're calling it co-design, which is nothing new. And what we're doing is saying that some of the design will be done by the designer, some of it will be done by the consumer, so they are in a way working together. But the way it's being supported is by the designer typically creating some software, which the consumer can then use to create a functional and a safe product. And we're targeting these products to be made using 3D printing, because they will be made for one or maybe, well, it could be many customers, but consumers, but typically not very large numbers. So how to do that? Well, we have this, moving on again, we have this principle of what we call a functional product. And what we said is that a sort of black box of functionality, which might contain the, say, the internal components, the functional components of an assembly. This will be defined by professional designers and engineers, and really the consumer has no input to this at all. And so this might be, for example, what goes inside your mobile phone or what goes inside your watch or whatever. And then around that, the designer also has to create a sort of design space, and there will be limits on that, safety critical limits, functional limitations as well, and these will also be defined by the. And so what you're asking the designer to do is to not a complete design, but almost an unfinished design, where they will have to define certain of the components, but other components, typically perhaps the outer shell, has not yet been fully designed, but they will have to create some sort of design space, a limited range design space within which the consumers can work. And if we move on, again, I'm not sure if you're at the same place as me, but if I click again, what we're saying is that the alternative design solutions can then be created by consumers. And if we just try to show this in principle, we keep clicking through, some consumers might design very kind of boring shape, some a little bit more interesting, some might go a bit more weird and wonderful. But what they're all doing is making use of the functionality that's been defined by the designers and engineers, but staying within the constraints that have been put upon them. And that's the principle, that's the theory behind what we're now trying to do at Loughborough. We're the only people doing this, and there's quite a few universities and big companies looking at this principle as well. And what we've been looking at particularly is how do we create an interface that users can understand, non-designers can understand, that they're happy to use, and which they can use to create functional and safe products. Now, we haven't got that far on it really, because we're creating what we're calling a mass customization toolkit, and we've done it for a number of different products, but the one I'm showing you here is a light shade or a lampshade. There's a little bit of functionality here, a little bit of safety as well in terms of keeping away from the globe, I think you call it. We call them bulbs. But what happens here is that you look on the left-hand side, the consumer can choose some parameters, different product shapes, different sizes, different patterns, different materials. We also want to do some physics-based modeling, where they can, for example, look at the center of the lampshade to make sure that it does hang in a true fashion. And what they can do is to click on the screen and actually move the shape of the lampshade. And what I should have done, and I'm afraid I must apologise, we've only just started using this recently, and we have come up with some quite interesting designs that ordinary people have done for themselves, but I haven't put the images in my PowerPoint, so I apologise for that. But what we find if you offer people this type of functionality, then rather having about 10% of the everyday population are happy to have a go at doing some design work and perhaps some 3D printing, we find that more typically 50% of people are happy to have a go at using this sort of tool, okay, which requires no design experience at all, and they know that the product that's going to be created is going to be a workable product and a safe product, and they're therefore happy just to keep changing the design until they're happy with something that can be 3D printed. So that's really as far as I want to go. I'm sorry I haven't got some of those images to show you. Some of them are quite boring, as we predicted. Others have been actually quite creative in their designs. But what lessons can we learn overall from this? So that we started off saying, how can additive manufacturing help and support innovation? Well, what we're seeing certainly is that additive manufacturing or 3D printing definitely offers new manufacturing opportunities, and this is happening in many different sectors of the market, many different applications, many different companies, and I showed you a few of those at the start. It's also being used in the world of fashion design also. So we all know that, but what has happened is that some professional designers have responded by creating new product innovations, some interesting designs that perhaps would have been very expensive to make previously, or maybe even totally impossible to make. And so really designers have got a great new tool that they can play with. It used to be said that we had to design for manufacture. Everything had to be made simple so that it could be easily made. One of my previous colleagues has been using the term manufacturing. 3D printing is manufacturing for design, where we can almost print any shape that the designers can come up with. So yes, we're seeing new product innovation, but what we're also seeing is that if we introduce new ways of doing business, then not just professional designers and engineers can make use of the opportunities that 3D printing brings, but ordinary consumers, what we're calling here non-professional designers, can create their own products as well, perhaps by doing all the design work themselves, but we think that does have inherent problems associated with it. We feel the real way is for to create a set of a co-design between professional designers, and they create a partnership to create products that can be not just functional and safe, but also personalized to individual tastes. And then, if that is going to happen, what we've also found is that professional designers must therefore learn to work in a new way. And I used the term before, they must be prepared to create unfinished designs. And instead of them having the total control over what the shape and functionality of the product is going to be, now they're saying, yes, they'll still be able to control the functionality, but the shape, the form, and the aesthetics can be partly decided by the consumer. And when we talk to professional designers about this, there's actually quite a dichotomy of attitude. Some designers are happy to let their designs be messed around by the consumers. Others are saying, no, I want to have control over my design. And what really gets interesting is when you're talking on a company-wide level, how does a company begin to allow consumers to have some input to design, but still maintain not just functionality and safety, but also their brand, their product brand? How do they protect that if they're letting consumers actually change the shape of the designs? So with that, I'll say thank you. Thank you, first of all, for your patience, for getting, and also for your attention while I've been speaking. I'm not sure if we're supposed to have the opportunity for you to ask questions, or if it's possible, but if it is, I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Ian, thank you very much. They don't have any questions. Thank you. We'll be in touch with you.
Okay then. So I'm right in thinking there's no opportunity for you guys to ask any questions.
They said they don't have it at this time, and
That's fine. If you do, you can see my email address there at the bottom. If anybody wants to send me information, I think